Hey, it's great to be back. I was away on holidays last week and Pastor Caleb filled in for me, so thanks Pastor Caleb for filling in. And welcome Jackie, congratulations on your new job, good to have you back here. And to everyone who's joining us today and those online, I'm pleased that you're with us today because we are in our third week of this series where we're looking at the miracles of Jesus. And the exciting thing is that we absolutely believe that God is a God who still does miracles. When my youngest daughter was about 4 or 5, our family, we were on holidays in Brisbane. It was Sunday morning, so we went to church like we do. And we went to another church, one of our churches in Brisbane. And I still remember the pastor, he preached on prayer that day. Now, this was a time in our family's life where my mother was very literally in the fight of her life against cancer. She was at her very lowest. And to look at her, you would not think she had weeks, but maybe days left in her. And we sat in that service, and as the preacher there preached this very simple message about prayer, one of the points that he made was as he went through different kinds of prayers, and he got to James chapter 5, and he talked about the prayer of faith that will make the sick person well. Now, my wife has always been a fantastic mother and like many of you, came prepared for the little ones in church. And so we always had, she always had these little books and pens and would tell our children to write or draw at that age. Draw something about what you're hearing about God, about Jesus, you know, what's happening. Draw something. And so after the service, this daughter of mine brought her drawing. And to me, it looked like 2 stick figures. And I'm sure there were some minute details that were, you know, bypassed my observation. So I asked her to explain, tell me what you've drawn. And she said, this is Grandma with the cancer. And this is Grandma after she's been healed of the cancer. Oh, to have the faith of a child. The faith of a child that doesn't doubt, that doesn't question, that just believes. That believes God's word is true. Jesus said a little bit of faith can move a mountain. Yet a lot of the time, it seems that the mountain stands in the way of our faith. It's the other way around for so many of us. And so let's start today by defining what faith is. Let's define faith as we talk about miracles. Hebrews chapter 11 tells us, it defines well for us what faith is. So as it comes up on the screen, Hebrews 11 verse 1, this gives us a great definition. Will you help me out with this? Read this with me. Faith is being sure of what we hope for, loudly, and certain of what we do not see. Sure and certain. Faith is sure and certain. Why is it, though, that our faith is often unsure and uncertain? If you have your Bibles with you today, we're going to be in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Open up to there. If you want to follow along in the YouVersion Bible app, it'll all be in there as well. And we're going to study the faith of a guy who had a kind of faith. He had a kind of faith. He kind of believed, but not really all the way. And so let me give you the context of this story. There was a little kid who had some long-term serious health problems. And the disciples tried to heal this kid. They tried to do the miracle. And they messed it up. They failed. They couldn't do it. And so all of the Pharisees and all of the religious leaders of the day they saw this as a chance to attack Jesus and his disciples. And so there was this big argument going on about what had happened and not happened and what should have taken place and what didn't and so on. People going back and forth. And that's when Jesus walks up on the scene. And in Mark chapter 9, verse 6, Jesus walks into the argument and he says, "What are you guys arguing about? What are you arguing about?" And then we're told that a man in the crowd answered Jesus and said, "Teacher, I brought my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of his speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth, and he gnashes his teeth, and he becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive the spirit out, but they couldn't do it." Imagine the pain of this parent, seeing their small child go through that kind of suffering. And the truth is that when you go through difficult stuff, it's hard, it hurts. But when someone you love goes through painful experiences, watching on, it's often even more painful. It hurts in a different kind of way when you watch someone you love struggle and go through difficult things. Some of you here today have some difficult stuff in your lives that's painful in your own experience, and that's tough. Others of you, you're watching someone you love suffer and wrestle and go through a difficult time, and that's painful too. That's hard to watch on. And that's what this dad here is experiencing. He's watching his boy, he's watching his son grow up in agony. And he's crying out for help. Nothing has worked. He probably took him to the doctors. He took him to specialists. Finally, he brings him to these disciples. And he's like, none of this is working. And Jesus jumps into the conversation in verse 19 and says, "You unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought him to Jesus. And when the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or into the water to kill him." Now watch what the father says. He says, "But what? But if you can do anything, if you can do something." If is the key word here. If you can, take pity on us. And perhaps that's where some of you are right now. You've got something bigger in your life and you can see no answer at all. All of the experts have told you that there's nothing that's going to help, nothing that they can do. And you're saying, "God, if you can." You might be able to, I'm not sure, but if you can. So if. Others of you, you're like, "I know he can, but the question is, I wonder if he will." He can, but why hasn't he? I think he might be able to, but I'm not sure. I've seen him do it for others, but I don't know if he'll do it for me. If you can. And Jesus replies in verse 23 with a question. He says, it's almost like he's hurt by the accusation, "If you can." If you can, Jesus says. And then he goes on and says, how much is possible? Everything is possible. Everything is possible for the one who believes. Everything is possible. So right now, perhaps you've got this major issue in your life. Maybe you're struggling with this problem that nobody knows about. Or maybe it's a battle that others do know about. Maybe your marriage is in big trouble and you don't think you can make it work. The question is, do you think that God, in his great love and mighty power, could actually heal your marriage and make it better than you? Absolutely he can. Anything is possible for the one who believes. Maybe your child, who you love dearly, has walked away and headed in the wrong direction, and you've tried everything you can to bring them back. Can God bring them back? No doubt about it. Anything is possible to the one who believes. Maybe for you, every doctor in town has said 6 months is your best case scenario. Or maybe it's someone that you love and you're watching on, and for them, they've got 6 months left to live. Could God heal that person? Absolutely. Everything is possible for the one who believes. And so this dad, he's thinking, maybe like some of you are right now, if there was just one thing I could ask from God, if there was just one thing, it would be my son. God, could you heal my son? I would trade places with him, anything. This is my one thing. Some of you right now, you have a one thing that if God would do for you, just this one thing. And I don't know what that is, but if this one thing could be different, if God, if it's possible, just this one thing, just heal this relationship, just give me hope in this area of my life, if you could do one thing, please do this thing. And Jesus says it is possible. It is possible if you believe. Now watch how this dad responds in verse 24. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe, but not completely. I do believe, sort of. Help me overcome my unbelief. I want to believe wholeheartedly, unreservedly, entirely, completely. And sometimes I do, but it's difficult for me to. I want to believe, and last week I believed kind of more, but I don't have so much faith right now. I want to believe, but I'm not sure that I can. And from deep within, this dad declares, I do believe, but I still have some doubts. I want to believe that it's possible, but I just don't know if I can. Why is it that we want to have this faith like a child, this simple, immediate, entire faith of a child, but we find ourselves doubting? We find ourselves doubting. And today I want to give you just 3 things that can be obstacles in our faith, obstacles for us to have this kind of childlike faith. 3 things that stand in the way of us having the faith of a child. And the first one is bargaining with God. Most of us have probably done this at some point in our lives. God, if you just get me out of this mess, I'll follow you forever. Or maybe for you it was, God, help me pass this test and I'll do whatever you say. Or just give me a sign that then I'll know you are real. So the problem is that we get the pass on the test and then we go on living the same way that we did, or that we're looking for a sign. And the problem with the sign, of course, is that a sign is not the real thing. If we see a sign that says motel 5 kilometres, you don't go and sleep underneath the sign, do you? Too many people want to sleep underneath the sign. They want a sign, they want evidence, they want proof, and they want to settle with that instead of the real thing. The real thing is Jesus. So don't try and bargain with God. Don't ask for a sign. Don't try and make a deal with God. That gets in the way of our childlike faith. Another obstacle some of us fall into in our faith journey is relying on the faith of others. What I mean by that is, like mum's a strong Christian, grandma's a great prayer, or the people I hang out with, they all go to church, but it's never been your own faith. Jesus, one time, he was talking with his disciples, and he said, hey, who do other people say that I am? Oh, some people say that you're John the Baptist. Other people, they're saying that you're Elijah the prophet. And Jesus looks at Peter and he says, Peter, who do you say that I am? And that's the question for us. Who do you say that he is? Who is Jesus to you? Because it doesn't matter what your mother or your grandmother believes. What do you believe? And this can be an obstacle when we lean on or rely on the faith of others and never grasp faith ourselves. The third obstacle to having faith like a child is demanding faith. And it happens all the time. We pray, God, I need you to do this, and I want you to do it like this, and in this time frame. And when it happens and goes as I've said, then you and I will be okay. We'll be tight. But then when God doesn't do what we demand of him, we're like, God, where were you? All I asked was you to do this one thing. And I've done all these things for you. I went to Bible study and I turned up to church again and I gave up this sin and I caught up on my tithe and you didn't do anything for me. So I'm not going to go to church anymore. That'll show you. And we try and manipulate God. What it does is it puts me in the place of God when I'm demanding from him, when I'm telling him what to do. It's a very demanding and manipulative kind of faith. So how do we get past those things? How do we learn to have the faith of a child? And I want to just give you two very simple steps, two very simple verses that give us action steps. The first is this: to build this kind of faith of a child, we have to saturate our lives in the Word of God, immerse our lives in God's Word. Romans chapter 10 verse 17 says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by what? By the Word of God. Faith doesn't come by hyping ourselves up, by telling ourselves it'll be all right. Faith doesn't come by reading some bestseller off the Quran books or by listening to Rob Simpson tell stories about his children. Faith comes by hearing the Word of God. That's where the power is, in the Word of God. If you want to get in good physical shape, then you might want to start eating right. You start eating the right things and then you start doing the right things. You probably want to get some exercise or go to the gym. And when you eat the right things and do the right things, then you're healthy. If you want to have the faith that Jesus talks about, faith like a child, faith that can move mountains, you need to feed and renew your mind on the things of God, on God's Word. You need to fill it with his thoughts and his words so it becomes a part of your life, so that your life is in fact immersed in his Word. When you listen to God's Word, when you read God's Word, it makes you stronger. And I can track this in my own life. The times when my faith is strong and I'm believing in God for great things and I'm confident in stepping out in his direction with faith, it's because I'm in God's Word in the way I ought to be. I'm spending time with him, listening to him, focusing on his Word, learning more about him. And the times when I'm feeling weak and doubts are coming, it's when I'm not in his Word the way I ought to be. And so we don't just immerse ourselves in God's Word. That's important. But the second thing that we do is we must also live it out. God's Word is of no effect unless we allow it to have an effect on our lives. It has to change us. So we also need to live it out. We don't just believe in it, we believe it. There's a difference. We don't just believe in his Word, we believe it in such a way that we're willing to stake our lives on it, that we're willing to change our behavior, that we're willing to do what it says. James chapter 2, verse 26 says this: as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. We need to have the faith and understand God's Word enough to do it, put it into action, live it out. As the body without the spirit is dead, faith without deeds is dead. So, back to the story. This dad needed a miracle. And he cried out to Jesus, I do believe, help me to overcome my unbelief. And that's a fair prayer for any one of us to pray at any moment. If we're asking God for something big, if we're seeking to extend our faith and believe in God for some miracle that we need to take place in our lives, it's fair for us to say, I do believe, help me in the times, the moments, the bits of this situation where unbelief creeps in. Help me. And here's what happened. Verse 25, when Jesus saw the crowd, that was running to the scene, people, sticky beaks coming to have a look on, he rebuked the impure spirit, saying, "You deaf and mute spirit, I command you to come out and never enter him again." The spirit shrieked, convulsed in him violently, and came out. The boy, we read, looked so much like a corpse that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up again. And he was healed by the power of our great loving God. A good God who loves his children and wants what's best for each of us, because our God is a God of miracles. Now, I told you about my mum and her fight against cancer. That was more than 15 years ago, and she has been cancer-free ever since, completely healed, 75 years old and still going strong, would beat me and many of you up a hill. God did that. God did that. He did that. He didn't do it in my timing. He didn't do it in my way. He didn't do it according to my plan, but he did it. And I'm going to tell you right now, until the day I die, I will declare the goodness of God. His goodness towards us, his goodness towards me, his goodness towards my mum, his goodness that exudes from him. Goodness is his character. It is who he is. I will proclaim the goodness of God, not because he healed her, because even if he had not healed her, even if he had not, I would still proclaim the goodness of God, because my faith is not in the outcome as much as it is in the character of who God is and the heart of who God is. He is a good God. Let me tell you about 3 young lads, young men with childlike faith. Back in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar, their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In the Old Testament, we read King Nebuchadnezzar said something like, "I'm sick of hearing all about your God. You guys bow down and worship this God all the time. I want you to bow down and worship me, or otherwise I'm going to throw you into a fire." And they said one of the greatest faith statements that you'll ever hear. They said, "You go ahead and throw us into the fire, but we will not worship your God, because our God will deliver us." Now that's childlike faith. That's simple faith. That's the kind of faith that I want to have. But then there's a high level of faith where they went to the next level and they said, "And even if he doesn't, we will still not worship your false God. We will still worship our God and believe in his goodness, the goodness of our God, because our God can and our God will. And even if he doesn't, we will still believe. We will still worship him. We will still trust in the goodness of God." That's childlike faith. That's faith that will move a mountain. That's the faith that will get us through the challenges and the difficulties that we and our loved ones face in this life. Will you pray with me now? Father, we ask that you would give us...
Hey, if you want to know what's going on in the church, I just want to encourage you to check out our Facebook and our Instagram page. And if you're not on either of those, that's all right. You can go to our website. It's life-church.org.au. And while you're there, I encourage you, press that prayer button and know that if you do that and you submit a prayer, that's absolutely going to be prayed for by us as pastors. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.